There's a moment that every avoidant person dreads, not when they pull away, not when they go silent, not even when they pretend they don't care. It's the moment after they realize they've pushed away something real. That's when instant regret hits, because deep down, avoidance isn't about not caring. It's about being terrified of needing someone. You see, people who avoid closeness don't do it because they're cold, they do it because closeness feels like danger. To them, love feels like a threat to their control, so they build walls, they keep things light, they chase space not because they don't want love, but because they're afraid of losing themselves in it. But here's what no one tells you: the very act of pushing someone away is what creates the emptiness they were trying to avoid in the first place. It's like trying to save yourself from drowning by refusing to get in the water. You stay dry, but you never swim. You stay safe, but you never live. And then one day they meet someone different, someone who brings peace, not chaos, someone who understands but doesn't chase, someone who holds space but knows their worth. And for the first time, the avoidant feels something unfamiliar. They feel seen. But instead of leaning in, they flinch, they retreat. They start playing old games. Then comes the trigger, the one thing that causes instant regret. It's not the other person leaving. It's watching that person finally stop trying. It's when the person they thought would always be there simply walks away with grace, no anger, no drama, just quiet acceptance. That silence is deafening, because avoidants are used to being chased, but they're not ready for peace. And when peace walks away, they realize what they've lost. Regret sets in when they see that love was never meant to trap them, it was meant to free them. That the person they pushed away wasn't trying to take their independence, they were trying to build something safe together. But by the time they see that, it's often too late, because love needs two people leaning in, not one running and one reaching. Here's the truth: avoidance might protect you from pain, but it also protects you from connection, and connection is the whole point. You can't love from behind a wall. You can't build something lasting when you're always running from vulnerability. So if you've ever felt the urge to pull away the moment things get real, stop, breathe, ask yourself, is this fear or is this fact? Because the person in front of you may not be trying to control you, they might just be trying to love you. And if you push them away now, you might just end up regretting the one thing that was truly safe. Avoidance in relationships often comes from a place of deep emotional self-protection rather than a lack of affection or care. People who seem distant, detached, or uninterested are not always heartless or cold. Many of them care more deeply than they can handle. Their avoidance is a shield, a way to manage overwhelming feelings that threaten to consume them. When someone has experienced emotional pain, inconsistency, or betrayal in the past, closeness can begin to feel unsafe. Love becomes something they want but don't trust, so instead of leaning into connection, they retreat. They may laugh off affection, downplay their feelings, or withdraw the moment things start to get real. It's not because they don't value the other person, it's because their nervous system equates love with danger. An avoidant person often grew up in an environment where vulnerability wasn't met with warmth. Maybe their emotions were dismissed, or their needs were met inconsistently. Over time, they learned that relying on others came with disappointment. So they became self-reliant, emotionally independent, and careful about who gets too close. This independence can look like strength, but beneath it lies a quiet fear, the fear of being hurt again. When someone tries to connect deeply, the avoidance instinct is to pull away, not because they don't care, but because caring feels like surrender. It feels like giving someone else the power to hurt them. What's tragic is that their intention is protection, but the result is isolation. They might crave intimacy and connection, yet every time it's offered, they freeze. The mind of an avoidant is filled with contradictions. They long for love but fear it. They want closeness but need control. They seek peace but create distance. It's a painful cycle where they end up pushing away the very thing they desire most. And when their partner feels unloved or rejected, they're often misunderstood. The partner might think they don't care about me, when in reality, the avoidant is battling an internal storm, a constant fight between wanting to open up and wanting to feel safe. This misunderstanding can be heartbreaking on both sides. The avoidant feels misunderstood and pressured, while the other person feels unwanted and dismissed. Yet if we look deeper, we see that the avoidant's silence or withdrawal isn't a sign of indifference, it's a coping mechanism. It's how they try to stay emotionally safe. They believe that by staying distant, they can prevent disappointment, rejection, or heartbreak. But ironically, that same distance becomes the very thing that brings the loneliness they were trying to avoid. Avoidance is not about not caring. It's about caring so much that it feels unbearable. It's about protecting the heart before it has a chance to break. When we start to understand that truth, we stop taking their distance personally and begin to see the fear underneath. Only then can healing begin, not through pressure or chasing, but through patience, consistency, and compassion that slowly teaches the avoidant that love doesn't always have to hurt. For someone with avoidant tendencies, distance becomes a form of emotional armor, a way to feel safe in a world that has at some point made closeness feel dangerous. They convince themselves that by staying detached, they are protecting their peace. They believe that the less they depend on someone, the less likely they are to be disappointed. This belief becomes so deeply ingrained that it starts to feel like truth. Intimacy begins to resemble a trap, and vulnerability feels like surrendering control. So they create emotional space, not because they don't want connection, but because they fear being consumed by it. Yet the more they pull away, the more they feed a quiet, growing emptiness inside. Distance provides a temporary sense of safety. When an avoidant person keeps others at arm's length, they don't have to confront uncertainty or emotional unpredictability. They don't have to worry about rejection because no one gets close enough to truly reject them. They feel secure in the illusion of control, believing that they're untouchable as long as they stay guarded. But beneath that surface calm lies a silent ache. The space that once felt safe starts to feel isolating. They look around and realize they're alone, and though they've succeeded in avoiding pain, they've also avoided joy, warmth, and closeness. The very walls that were built to protect now serve as barriers to fulfillment. What's most paradoxical is that avoidants often crave love just as much as anyone else. They want connection, laughter, comfort, and shared moments, but they want it without the vulnerability it requires. They hope for intimacy without exposure, love without risk, but real connection can't exist without emotional openness. When they avoid closeness, they unknowingly trade genuine intimacy for safety, and that trade always comes with a cost. The loneliness that follows isn't immediate, it builds slowly. It shows up in quiet nights, in relationships that feel shallow, in conversations that never go deeper than surface level. Over time, this cycle becomes exhausting. The avoidant begins to wonder why relationships always feel unfulfilling, why they never seem to find the connection they secretly long for. What they often don't realize is that the emptiness they feel is self-created. It's not that love isn't available to them, it's that they're too afraid to fully receive it. Distance gives them the illusion of safety, but love requires presence. It asks for risk, for surrender, for openness. Without those, what remains is a hollow version of connection, one that looks calm but feels cold. Eventually, the avoidant learns that space may prevent heartbreak, but it also prevents intimacy. They come to see that safety without closeness isn't peace, it's loneliness in disguise. And in that moment of realization, they begin to understand that true safety doesn't come from running, it comes from allowing themselves to be seen, to be known, and to trust that not everyone who comes close is there to hurt them. For someone who tends to avoid emotional closeness, the moment Deepest regret often arrives in silence. It's not when the arguments happen or when the other person begs them to stay. It's when the person they once kept at a distance simply stops trying. That quiet moment when the calls stop, when the messages fade, when there's no more chasing or convincing, hits harder than any confrontation. Avoidants are used to people fighting for their attention, trying to break through their walls, proving their loyalty. But when that effort ends and all that's left is calm acceptance, something shifts inside them. It's in that silence that they realize they were never being controlled, they were being cared for. The avoidance defense mechanism thrives on control. They feel safest when they are the ones setting the pace, deciding when to come close and when to pull back. As long as the other person keeps pursuing them, they feel wanted, needed, even powerful. But when that pursuit stops, they're forced to confront the truth the other person has finally accepted their distance. And that acceptance doesn't come with anger. It comes with dignity. It's peaceful, and that peace is what unnerves them the most. Because peace means finality. It means the other person has chosen self-respect over trying to prove their worth. This graceful silence creates an emotional mirror. The avoidant begins to see what they've lost: someone who loved them enough to stay patient, but also strong enough to walk away. For the first time, they can't dismiss the other person as too needy or too emotional. There's no drama to hide behind, no argument to justify their withdrawal. All that remains is stillness, and in that stillness, the truth becomes undeniable. They didn't protect themselves from pain, they created it. They didn't save their independence, they sacrificed connection. Regret often doesn't show up as tears or panic, it arrives as a quiet ache, a realization that the person who brought calm into their life is no longer there. They remember the small acts of love they once brushed off, the words they didn't say, the closeness they resisted. They start to understand that what they mistook for control was actually fear, and what they pushed away wasn't pressure, it was genuine care. But by the time this awareness comes, the other person has already built peace elsewhere. There's something deeply humbling about losing someone not because of conflict, but because of quiet acceptance. That moment shatters the avoidance illusion of safety. It shows them that love cannot be kept waiting forever. The silence they once craved now echoes with absence, and that absence becomes the space where regret grows. Because in the end, they realize it wasn't the chase they missed, it was the chance to finally be loved without conditions, and they let it slip away. One of the biggest misconceptions avoidant individuals carry is the belief that love will somehow take away their independence. They fear that opening their hearts will mean losing themselves, that closeness will demand too much, change them, or leave them powerless. To them, commitment can look like surrender, and vulnerability feels like handing over control. So they hold back, keeping parts of themselves hidden, believing that staying guarded is the only way to remain free. Yet what they don't realize is that real love doesn't confine, it liberates. True connection doesn't demand you to give up who you are, it allows you to become more of it. In a healthy relationship, love is not a cage but a collaboration. It's not about ownership, it's about understanding. When two people come together from a place of mutual respect, they don't absorb each other, they amplify each other. The avoidance fear of being controlled often stems from past experiences where love came with conditions, manipulation, or emotional inconsistency. They learned that depending on someone meant being vulnerable to disappointment, so they vowed never to let anyone have that kind of power again. But that vow, while protective, becomes a barrier. It stops them from experiencing the version of love that feels safe, one built on choice, not obligation. True love allows room for individuality. It doesn't ask anyone to shrink or compromise their identity. Instead, it celebrates differences, encourages growth, and honors personal space. A healthy partner doesn't want to control, they want to connect. But for the avoidant, letting someone close enough to see that feels risky. They struggle to believe that someone could love them without needing to own them. That disbelief leads them to test boundaries, to withdraw when things get too intimate, or to sabotage moments of closeness not because they want to hurt the other person, but because they don't yet trust that love can exist without loss. Ironically, the more they pull back to protect their independence, the more trapped they become inside their own walls. They begin to realize that solitude without connection doesn't feel like freedom, it feels like isolation. Independence without emotional intimacy may protect them from being hurt, but it also keeps them from being truly known. They start to understand that the kind of love that threatens their freedom isn't love at all, it's control disguised as care. And when they finally meet someone who offers love without pressure, patience without demand, and presence without possession, they feel something different: peace. That peace is what begins to heal them. It shows them that love can exist alongside autonomy, that being cared for doesn't mean being caged. They learn that vulnerability isn't the loss of control, it's the doorway to connection. The real power lies not in holding back, but in choosing to let someone in and still remaining whole. In that choice, love becomes what it was always meant to be: not a threat to independence, but the space where two free people choose to walk together. Avoidance is often mistaken for strength, a sign of control, composure, or emotional intelligence. But beneath that calm exterior lies fear. The fear of being seen too deeply, the fear of relying on someone who might leave, the fear of being hurt the way they once were. To an avoidant person, vulnerability feels like exposure. It feels like walking into a room without armor, trusting that no one will take advantage of their openness, so they protect themselves the only way they know how: by staying guarded, detached, or distant. They believe that if they can stay in control of their emotions, they can avoid pain. What they don't realize is that by trying to avoid pain, they also avoid connection. And without connection, even the safest life begins to feel hollow. Avoidance promises comfort but delivers emptiness. It offers the illusion of peace: no conflict, no vulnerability, no risk, yet behind that illusion lies a deep, unspoken loneliness. The human heart is wired for connection. We crave touch, understanding, and the feeling of being known. Avoidants often suppress that craving, convincing themselves that they're better off alone, that emotional distance equals strength. But isolation isn't safety, it's self-denial. When they push people away to avoid hurt, they also push away the chance to experience love, joy, and belonging. Their fear becomes a silent prison, one that keeps them safe from heartbreak, but also from healing. True connection requires courage. It demands that we take the risk of being misunderstood, of being disappointed, of being seen as we truly are. For someone with avoidant tendencies, this risk feels unbearable because it means surrendering control. Yet, ironically, it's in that surrender that real safety emerges. When you allow yourself to be vulnerable with the right person, someone kind, patient, and emotionally steady, you begin to see that not all intimacy leads to pain. Some closeness heals the very wounds that caused the fear in the first place. Avoidants often spend so much time trying to control the outcome of relationships that they miss the magic of simply being in one. They analyze, withdraw, and test, trying to make sure nothing will catch them off guard. But love is unpredictable by nature. It's not something that can be managed, it can only be experienced. And when they finally stop running from that truth, when they let go of the illusion of control, something powerful happens. They begin to feel alive again. The journey from avoidance to connection isn't about losing control. It's about choosing courage. It's realizing that fear might always whisper, but love speaks louder. That fulfillment doesn't come from staying untouched. It comes from being brave enough to touch and be touched in return. Pain may be a possibility, but so is joy. And if they never take that risk, they'll never know the difference between merely surviving and truly living. In the end, the heart always knows what the mind tries to deny, that love, though uncertain, is worth the risk. Avoidance may feel like safety, but it only delays the peace that comes from true connection. Real strength isn't found in running from vulnerability, but in standing still long enough to be seen, to be loved, and to love back without fear. May we all find the courage to lower our walls and let something real reach us. Thank you for listening, for opening your hearts, and for reminding us that even the most guarded souls can learn to love again.